you those pictures that are now coming in as the Prime Minister is expected to put forth India's perspectives on the G20 agenda, and he is expected to attend and to address the sessions there of the summit. That is Prime Minister Narendra Modi leaving, and this will be the fourth consecutive G20 summit held in Global South, as the Prime Minister is expected to put forth India's perspectives on the G20 agenda. And this is what the MEA has been saying in the statement, that on the margins of the G20 Leaders Summit, the Prime Minister is expected to hold bilateral meetings with some of the leaders present in Johannesburg, and the Prime Minister will also be participating in the India, Brazil, South Africa leaders meeting that is being hosted by South Africa. The sessions of the summit that include inclusive and sustainable economic growth, leaving no one behind, building our economies, the role of trade, financing for development and debt burden. And as far as Prime Minister Narendra Modi is concerned, he is now leaving for Johannesburg. However, despite as Donald Trump's boycott that he has sought of the G20 to be held in South Africa, India is now making its way as far as the IPSA meeting is concerned, where the Prime Minister is attending this meeting as soon as he is expected to arrive at Johannesburg in South Africa, where he will be attending the 20th G20 summit with President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, who is hosting from Saturday to Sunday, in which Donald Trump of the United States has decided to boycott the G20 summit. So with India being at the receiving end of the US President's tariff tirade, the G20 summit is now expected to see the Prime Minister presenting New Delhi's perspective on inclusive and sustainable economic growth and the role of trading in building economies, financing for development and debt burden, according to the Ministry of External Affairs given out in a statement. And the Prime Minister is expected to take part in IPSA, which is India, Brazil and South Africa, with Ramaphosa and Brazilian President also being present for the G20 summit, as Donald Trump imposed a 50% tariff on imports from India and Brazil to the US, while 30% on South Africa's exports to his country. The Prime Minister is expected to speak as far as when it comes to at least 3 sessions are now concerned, and the Prime Minister has now left for South Africa for Johannesburg to attend the G20 summit. President Trump, one part of the United States, had made the announcement that no US official would be attending the G20 summit, as according to him, white people were being allegedly persecuted in South Africa, which South Africa has completely denied. Let's connect with Srinjoy on this. Srinjoy, Prime Minister departing for Johannesburg. This is a G20 summit that South Africa this time is hosting.
Yes, this is the 4th time a third world country or the South country is hosting a G20. Indonesia, India, Brazil, and now South Africa. But unfortunately, 2 or 3 major leaders will not be there for different reasons. President Trump, of course, has said he will not be there, and no official delegation from his country will be there. So America is not taking part, and it becomes a G19. And the South African High Commissioner to India, Anil Suklal, has told Times Now that, well, even if that was so, 99% of the G20 countries are supportive of his country and the process. Also, President Vladimir Putin of Russia may not be there, though there will be a Russian delegation, as it's also being heard that Xi Jinping, the Chinese leader, will not be there. Nevertheless, it's going to be an important session, keeping in mind debt restructuring, keeping in mind climate change, keeping in mind a big number of South issues. So Prime Minister's presence is extremely important. He's expected to meet Mr. Ramaphosa, the South African leader, and several other leaders like Mr. Lula. So we'll have to see how it all turns out in terms of the G20, but it certainly remains an important event for the year. The next G20, of course, will be in America, but this one too is going to be very important.
Absolutely. And speaking of the sessions that the Prime Minister will be speaking at, Srinjoy, do you have any information on that account with the MEA statement Prime Minister will be presenting India's position across the full spectrum of the G20 agenda and is scheduled to speak in all three formal sessions of the summit. But in the meantime, we'll play out exactly when you have been speaking, as far as South Africa is now concerned, which is hosting the South Africa High Commissioner. This conversation that will play out exactly when it comes to the role that India will be playing at the G20 summit, what's expected from Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and the geopolitical situation. Let's listen in.
And I think what we should expect out of this G summit, despite the difficulties we've had because of the geopolitical environment, a very successful summit and deliverables on all of the priorities that we have put on the table. We are confident that 99% of the G20 membership is fully behind us, and we will have a successful summit. Anything without the presence of the USA will have an impact. But the G20 is bigger than any one member state. The G20 is a collective. 99% of the G20 membership is going to be there. They have fully supported South Africa's theme and priorities. And we don't believe that one country can collapse the G20.
Well, as far as this meeting is now concerned, Shinjoy, will you speak, on the sidelines of the G20 summit? Prime Minister is also expected to hold several bilateral meetings with world leaders. As IPSA is concerned, which is India, Brazil, South Africa leaders meeting that is also being hosted by South Africa.
Yes, that's what I was saying. He's definitely going to meet President Lula. He's definitely going to meet Mr. Ramaphosa. And both meetings will take place as part of the IPSA summit. Besides that, he's likely to meet a number of other world leaders. Now, there are people he hasn't met as yet. For instance, the new Prime Minister of Japan. So we are not sure whether that meeting will eventually take place, but the likelihood of that meeting taking place is high because he hasn't met her as yet. And Japan and India are such good friends, such serious partners, that a meeting is extremely likely. Apart from that, Prime Minister will have a lot on his plate because the South agenda is also something that he will speak for. Now, climate change is a particularly important issue. Debt restructuring is a particularly important issue. These are issues that have great value, and it's very important that these things get mentioned in the G20, because at this point, the South Africans have taken over from where India began. For instance, India decided that the African Union would have to be part of this G20 process as an invitee. And that is exactly what the South Africans are continuing with. In between, the Brazilians did the same. So all these issues are coming in. The point is that there is continuity and there is also change. But the continuity that
I believe, Shinjoy, Prime Minister has also shared a video as far as he campaigned for Johannesburg. Let's play that out. All right, Shinjoy, because, as you mentioned, this visit also provides an opportunity for the Global South countries to reinforce their role in shaping global and, technological governance. because we're looking at a lot of tensions there, the geopolitical flux that seems to be taking place, the role that India and the Global South would be leading. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, apart from all this, the Global South, that is definitely important because Indonesia, India, Brazil, and South Africa have had G20 summits one after the other. The other important role that will be played will relate to terrorism. And again, there will be a reinforcement on terrorism because many countries are worried about terror financing. And it's entirely possible that there will be discussions on terror financing between India and the European countries.
Well, that is exactly what India has been making the world aware as far as terror is now concerned. But speaking on at least 3 sessions that is now being planned for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, along with several bilaterals that he is also expected to attend in the G20 summit that is being hosted by South Africa this time. Srinjoy, for the moment, thank you very much for joining in.